On St. Patrick's Day, Thursday, March 17, 1966, striking grape pickers from Delano began a 300-mile pilgrimage northward through the valley of their labor to the state capitol in Sacramento. The march was more than a means of dramatizing a strike, more than a plea for laws to protect farm workers, more than a demand for recognition of their union. It was a symbol of the long, long struggle of California farm workers for a more equitable share of the wealth they have helped to produce. The road that led to this Easter pilgrimage goes back many years. It's a long road that crosses a big land. Everything is big in California. The land is big and rich. The men and the corporations who own the land are big and rich. The people who work the land are poor, very poor. The how and the why of this is not a pretty story. It doesn't have a happy ending, at least not yet. Agriculture is California's biggest industry. It's a $3 billion a year business. Farming in California has always been big. Many farms in California started big. Some of the old Spanish and Mexican land grants, comprising thousands of acres, have never been broken up. More than 3/4 of all farmland in California is owned by 6% of the industry. To put it another way, more than 1/3 of all farmland in the state is owned by less than 1% of the owners. This, then, is the story of monopoly and what monopoly does to people. There's a manufactured word for this particular monopoly: agribusiness. Some farms are owned by individuals, but many are corporations. Many are listed on the stock exchange. Some are also in the packing and processing business, and are among the giants of the U.S. food industry. Agribusiness has ruled its domain, the fertile valleys of California, with absolute power, economic and political. The Southern Pacific Railroad once ran the state of California. A famous novel was written about that called The Octopus. The SP is still one of the state's biggest landowners. It's a part of agribusiness. So is DeGiorgio, the Kern County Land Company, Miller and Lux, Anderson and Clayton, the California Packing Corporation. The power of this corporate wealth has not gone unchallenged. At a place called Muscle Slough, in what is now Kings County, 7 men lost their lives on May 11, 1880, in a dispute over land titles between settlers and the railroad. The tree under which they died is called Tragedy Oak. That struggle is now history, perpetuated by an official state martyr. New struggles have replaced it, many of them. Other names and other dates follow. Fresno, 1917. Vacaville, 1932. Corcoran, 1933. Pixley, 1933. El Centro, 1934. Santa Rosa, 1935. Los Angeles, 1935. Salinas, 1936. Stockton, 1937. Bakersfield, 1938. Bakersfield again in 1947. Stockton, 1948. El Centro, 1961.
Y que yo he de decir que yo estoy cansado, que el camino es largo y no se ve el fin. Yo no vengo a cantar porque mi voz sea buena, ni tampoco hay malestar que no quisiera yo descansar, pero mi alma grita, tú no puedes descansar, desde Veneno voy hasta Sacramento, hasta Sacramento, mis derechos a pelear, mi virgencita guadalupana, oye estos pasos, que todo el mundo lo sabrá, desde Veneno voy hasta Sacramento, hasta Sacramento, mis derechos a pelear.
Hostile landlords and exorbitant rents force large numbers of migrant farm families to live on riverbanks and under bridges. Children and parents spend their day picking fruit and then return to the riverbank to prepare food and to sleep. When braceros were plentiful, growers and local police often conspired to drive families to another area. What about the single farm worker? Because of low income, he is exiled to cheap hotels. He can escape the winter cold and rain for about 50 cents a night. Social life in the community is closed to him. If he is lucky, he has money for food. If he cannot buy his food, then perhaps soup and bread is available from a local church-operated bread line. The growers and local communities have, over the years, tolerated church-financed soup kitchens as a means of avoiding hunger protests and as a guarantee that cheap labor would be available to them when needed. Many of the valley towns have a special kind of check room, a place to put a bundle when you arrive in town looking for a job, a place where you can receive your mail or buy old clothing. A bundle for the single farm worker is usually everything he owns. Historically, the farm family, whether migrant or local, has lived either on the edge of town or in a labor camp. For decades, the prevailing water supply has been from a central faucet. For thousands of farm families over the many decades, there has been no indoor water supply, no indoor toilets. Water has had to be transported and stored for drinking, washing, and bathing. Here in the heart of rich agricultural country, farm families transport their water, and some of them live where electricity is not available.
México ha llegado la noticia muy alegre que de Veneno es diferente, pues el pueblo ya está en contra de los rancheros y engreídos que acababan con la gente. Y como somos hermanos, la alegría compartimos con todos los campesinos. ¡Viva la revolución! ¡Viva nuestra asociación! ¡Viva huelga en general!
California farm workers, nearly 500,000 of them at harvest peak, produce more crops than are grown in any other state. The profits of their labor show up in the dividends of corporations, in stock market quotations, in the affluence of the owners. For the farm workers, the return is poverty. The Organization of Agricultural Workers has been called the greatest unfinished task facing the American labor movement. And to add to his other woes, the farm worker faces the increasing threat of killer chemicals.
Well, when I became ill from picking fruit, and Parathon taken me to the hospital, and Alma's unconscious. Stayed there 9 days, and brought me home. For 2 weeks after I got home, I was sick in bed, couldn't do any work.
I was in the hospital for 9 days with Parathon poisoning, and when I come home, I wasn't able to do any housework for 4 months.
I contacted Parathon poisoning while picking lemons in an orchard. I became dizzy, sick to my stomach, and passed out, and the ambulance picked me up, took me to the hospital, and I was in the hospital for 9 days. It left me with a dizziness and a bad balance, and I haven't been able to work at anything since.
School history books do not record the struggles of farm workers to organize unions. Wheatland is a small town in California near Marysville. In 1913, hop pickers at the Durst Ranch near Wheatland held a peaceful meeting to protest low wages and unsanitary living conditions. Sheriff's deputies fired into the crowd. 2 men were killed and many injured. 2 leaders of the workers went to prison. The Imperial Valley, an old battleground, was the scene in 1961 of what, until then, was the most successful field strike since the Stockton asparagus strike of 1948. The cry was $1.25, $1.25 an hour. These pictures of field workers putting down their tools and coming out on strike were without precedent in the Imperial Valley in 3 decades. In the end of the struggle, again, there was not clear-cut victory, but there was momentum, and those who could detect the signs saw a new day coming. In fact, El Centro in 1961 marks a turning point in the long road.
El día 8 de septiembre de los campos de Belén nos salieron los filipinos. Y después de 2 semanas para unirse a la batalla salieron los mexicanos. Y juntos vamos cumpliendo con la marcha de la historia para liberar el pueblo. ¡Viva la revolución! ¡Viva nuestra asociación! ¡Viva huelga en general! ¡Viva la huelga en el PIB! ¡Viva la causa en la historia! La raza llena de gloria, la victoria va a cumplir.
Meet the new tomato harvesting machine. In 1963, there were 25 of these in operation. 2 years later, there were 260. It is estimated 800 were operating in California during the 1966 harvest. The percentage of the crop harvested by machine in 1964 was only 3.5%. A year later, 25%. In 1966, about 75%. At this rate, the new tomato harvesting machine will eliminate some 30,000 jobs during the first 5 years of its use. In California, cotton is a $330 million crop. Almost all of the cotton is grown on large corporation-owned farms. During the last 25 years, the cotton growing industry has increased production nearly 500% and is rapidly approaching the total elimination of field hand labor. The value of the cotton increased from around $25 million in 1940 to $330 million in 1965. During this same 25-year period, wages for picking cotton remained stationary, varying from 2.5 to 3.5 per hundredweight. Between 1951 and 1961, the mechanical cotton harvester eliminated 50,000 farm workers during the peak season. Today, only around 5% of cotton is harvested by hand. Traditionally, cotton thinning and weeding was an important source of wages for farm workers. a new machine, the Precision Planter Plus chemical control of weeds, may eliminate all hand labor from cotton by 1970. Over the decades, many thousands of farm families in the San Joaquin Valley were able to buy food during the winter months if they could find work in cotton. Today, they are brushed aside by the landowning banks and corporations. Today, the landowners need only chemicals and huge machines. With rich soil, chemicals, and water, the yield per acre in California is twice the national average. Protesting a 40% increase in rent, farm families living in county-operated labor camps marched toward Visalia, California. These residents of Woodville and Linnell farm labor centers marched to publicize their protest to the Tulare County Housing Authority. In the summer of 1965 and in the heart of rich California farmland, these workers signal a growing protest movement.
Patrón, yo lo quiero con mi corazón.
Yeah, I know you love your boss.
Aunque está poquito gordiflón.
You finished, Pat.
Yo lo quiero con mi corazón.
Yeah, now look, you know this is right
A
in the
mí me
area?
trajo desde Nuevo León
Mexico, huh?
y me trajo a mí en un camión.
Came in a truck.
Jale ya no había en Nuevo León. Pa' que vean que yo no soy huevón.
Now look, man, there's a strike in the
Que
area.
si como quiero a mi patrón,
Yeah, look.
yo lo quiero con mi
Well,
corazón.
stop working a minute. I want to talk
Allá
to
en el film me pone mi canción.
you. Yeah, all right, now look.
Pa'
There-
que vean que yo no soy huevón.
An operating engineer working under a union contract earns $5.19 an hour, with an additional 54 cents in fringe benefits. An unorganized farm worker in California operating the same size equipment is paid an average of $1.50 an hour. The farm worker has no fringe benefits and no provisions for overtime pay. For this member of the organized labor movement, a total of $5.73 an hour. For this farm worker, about $1.50 an hour. A bricklayer in the construction trades earned $5.57 an hour under his 1965 wage contract. Unorganized stoop labor in agriculture was paid from $1.10 to $1.40 an hour. The iron worker earned $5.70. The farm worker, $1.50. The pattern is clear. Now, in the 60s, farm labor is getting some belated attention from the top leadership of the American labor movement. But it is still less than the job requires. Never in the long history of this struggle has farm labor been given the immense amounts of money and organizational support needed to assure success. The same effort has not been put into organizing farm labor that went into organizing the auto industry, the steel industry, the rubber industry, and the oil industry in the 30s. Small-scale organizing drives have done little more than create the illusion of helping farm workers. The well-padded officialdom has, for the most part, kept its back turned on the most poverty-stricken group of workers in the nation. For half a century, the agribusiness lobby has been a constant roadblock in the path of social legislation for farm workers. They have denied unemployment insurance to farm workers. They denied farm workers the benefits of minimum wage legislation until the summer of 1966, when the first small breakthrough was made in the federal Congress. They even blocked legislation to provide sanitation facilities for field workers. It was only in the 1960s that a law was passed finally in California requiring field toilets for women. In 1962, in Fresno, California, the National Farm Workers Association was formed. The association recognized some essential common denominators. A substantial segment of California's farm workers are of Mexican ancestry, tied together by a proud culture, a common religion, and the bond of a great and lyrical language. A new demand was made for an end to ancient injustices. A contagion was in the air. Slowly, farm wage rates began to reflect the pressures. They started to creep upward. People were on the march. Two organizations, the National Farm Workers Association Independent and the Agricultural Workers Organizing Committee, an entity of the AFL-CIO, were in the field. In December of 1964, Bracero program, the treaty importation of Mexican field workers, came to an end. The closing of this traffic removed a major weapon from the hands of agribusiness and equalized somewhat the odds facing those endeavoring to organize farm workers. Some braceros returned almost immediately as legal immigrants, green card workers, permit workers, but the relative position of the domestic workforce had beyond question been strengthened. And a substantial segment of that workforce was of Mexican ancestry. From this base came the National Farm Workers Association under Cesar Chavez. In alliance with the Agricultural Workers Organizing Committee, it began a new chapter in the long farm worker history at the little San Joaquin Valley town of Delano in September of 1965. The Delano grape strike, begun for union recognition and a pay scale of $1.40 an hour, became much more than that, as the strikers themselves were to declare in their own manifesto, the Plan of Delano.
We are conscious of the historical significance of our pilgrimage. It is clearly evident that our path travels through a valley well known to all Mexican farm workers. We know all of these towns of Delano, Madera, Fresno, Modesto, Stockton, and Sacramento, because along this very same road, in this very same valley, the Mexican race has sacrificed itself for the last 100 years. Our sweat and our blood have fallen on this land to make other men rich. This pilgrimage is a witness to the suffering we have seen for generations. The penance we accept symbolizes the suffering we shall have in order to bring justice to these same towns, to this same valley. The pilgrimage we make symbolizes the long historical road we have traveled in this valley alone, and the long road we have yet to travel, with much penance, in order to bring about the revolution we need.
The Delano strike again projected the plight of farm workers into the consciousness of the nation. The Delano strike brought the two unions into direct confrontation with one of the giants of agribusiness, DiGiorgio. DiGiorgio, the far-flung corporation that made more than $2 million in profits in 1963, became the focal point of a bitter struggle. Congressional investigators came to Delano. Such investigations are not new. The plight of farm labor in California is probably one of the most studied and investigated subjects in the annals of human suffering. Report has been piled upon report, but proposed remedies have been frustrated or ignored. This was true in the 30s. It's just as true today. Perhaps the spotlight of investigation helped the cause of the Delano strikers, as it helped strikers in the 30s. But other and more elementary tactics were of equal, if not greater, importance. Traditionally, the labor movement in California and others sympathetic to the cause of farm workers have responded generously to calls for food and money. This was true in the 30s, and it's just as true today. Tons of food and clothing and thousands of dollars have gone into the valley from all over California and the nation. The grape strikers of Delano proclaimed the names of unfair brands to the nation and backed the boycott with picket lines. Then, on Easter weekend, 1966, the strikers completed their 25-day, 300-mile trek to Sacramento. On a gray Easter Sunday, April 10, 1966, the strikers and their supporters, 10,000 strong, came swinging up the Capitol Mall to the steps of the State Capitol building. It was beyond question the largest, the broadest, and the most significant public gathering on behalf of farm workers in California history. A moment of victory was at hand. Shenley Industries, second largest of the Delano grape growers, agreed after 7 months of strike to recognize the union and to negotiate a contract. Shortly afterwards, the DiGiorgio Corporation agreed to recognize the union if the union could prove itself in a poll of workers. A victory confirmed subsequently by hard-won election victories on a number of DiGiorgio properties. In August of 1966, the National Farm Workers Association and the AFL-CIO Agricultural Workers Organizing Committee were merged to form the United Farm Workers Organizing Committee, AFL-CIO. Chavez is its director.
But the establishment is powerful. The organized farm worker and his family are forced to fight on every field and in every orchard. They have to live with this. Man has learned he cannot fight machines. They fight to improve their substandard way of life within a system that so far has given every advantage to those for whom they are forced to work. And they have learned the fight is part of the work. To the farm workers, their wives and children, and to all those who have joined them in their struggle, this film is dedicated.
Viva la huelga en el Viva la causa en la historia.